How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the brain is going to be the tier list for the new meta. I do hope that you enjoy today because we're going to be going through quite a few different decks here, talking about the viabilities of each one and where I would place them all. So again, a lot of these are going to be my takes. If you have a different take, definitely let me know down below in the comment section. I really do value everyone's opinion on these because we don't even know what the format's really going to be yet. So let's go ahead and just be constructive and talk about what we think could happen. Just from my point of view, there's a few of these that I think are going to be really good sleepers and the other ones that are going to be really bad decks. And we'll talk about which ones are which. To hop right in, we do have Labyrinth to start. So this one is really interesting right now. It's not really been like fantastic. It did well at the YCS, but I still don't think that warrants anything above like maybe like a low tier 1, a high tier 2. There's just a lot of other decks right now that I think do better things than Lab does. Lab's like fine. It's either the most underwhelming deck possible or like one of the best decks in the room. So it's really hard for me to put anything like higher than like a really low tier 1 or a high tier 2. So either or I think is fine, but it's not like fantastic by any means. Fire King Snake, it's still going to be up as like the best deck right now. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the regular Pure deck as well. Pure has just been unstoppable, and it's really funny because Banless hit and everyone's like, well, Pure is not going to be that good, but it won the YCS because it's still fantastic. The whole thing with the Fire King cards is like the Fire King cards were the worst part of the deck, right? Like they're just inherent bricks and they're just not good to use. Like, yeah, people top with them and they're like fine and decent, but like Pure is just so much better. You have a lot more room for non-engine. You have a lot more room for anything that you realistically want to do for the deck. Any other engine that you want to play. So I think that is overall just the better choice. But Fire King is still going to be an option that you can do. It's just Pure. It's a lot better right now. Tier limit, it's going to be Rogue. It's still one of those decks that can kind of pop out of the woodwork and do really well. But at the same time, there's just other decks that can compete a lot harder than this at the moment. So it kind of is what it is, but you know, it's still tier. It'll still do something eventually, but not right now. It's still really good in a sense where like if you understand the deck and you can play it and fit for the format, especially like right now, it's a really rough thing to play because a lot of people are on Tenpai and Tenpai plays the Dimension Shifter and like every list. And then also if you're playing against like just purely or any other deck that can run it, like Shifter is just ban shifter, right? Ban shifter. But until then, it's gonna be a rough matchup. With anything that's allowing themselves to play this. Rescue Ace. I'm gonna put this in tier 2. It's like a low tier 2. It's like fine. You can, but it's just not as good. We really should have gotten another airlifter back, but I guess it's fine that we didn't because they only really want one best fire deck, and it's very apparent so far with how the ban list went. Especially not seeing an airlifter back. That was really confusing. This deck is also very annoying to play against, so like I'm actually okay with this being just tier 2. It's just not the strongest engine to play. You still play the Fire King cards over the rescue cards. Maybe if we get more airlifter, then sure. First one and just don't play Infernoble. This deck is so bad. Kashtira. Kashtira is going to be like a high tier 2, a low tier 1. It's kind of the same thing as Lab. I think the two are like interchangeable. You could play either, and you could do really well, or you could do very poor. I think they both have a really interesting game plan, which is very viable in the format. So, like, either of these are fantastic pickups right now. Just make sure you're spending the time to actually devote to them, because I feel like a lot of people pick these decks up, and they're like, well, I can play the deck because it's, like, super easy, and they find out it's not. So it's one of those things where I think that both these decks reward really good players, and I think they're both very strong. But just make sure that you spend enough time testing before you bring them to an event. Pearly is so weird. It's like below these two, but above this. Tier 2 still, like, the other Delicious, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. And, like, no one besides, like, Dean Confem, shoutouts to you, because you're insane with this deck, is actually going to play this deck with 2 Delicious versus 1. It's just one of those things where it's like everyone's just playing Snake or like one of the other decks right now. Maybe Purely sees like some kind of resurgence, but like we won't really see that for a little while. The deck itself is relatively unexplored right now just because there's a lot more things that you can do in the meta, but a lot of people haven't really went back to it. So maybe if we see that in the future, we'll see a little bit more of that, but I still think that it's not like your best option right now. The other thing here is gonna be Dragon. Just don't. It's not good. It's not good at all. Same with Chimera. Chimera's just not very good either. It's like fine, you could. If you go first, then you can actually like hand rip and set up your board. You probably don't lose, but like your engine is just a lot weaker than most other things at the moment, so I definitely don't recommend it. Now, Unchained, I think this is really interesting because it depends on what you're talking about, right? Like if you're talking about like Ubel Unchained, if you're talking about like Unchained Lab, which was just like the standard for a while. I'm just going to put this up next to Lab because I think that another deck that's really unexplored is Unchained. Manabe did bring it to the regional, I think it was Utah, and won. So the deck still has a lot of power to it and a lot of things it can do, especially with a lot of the Ubel support right now as well. I think this deck is extremely unexplored, and if we start seeing a lot more players switch back to Unchained, it could be a nice deck for the format. We'll have to wait and see. We're also getting the Fiendsmith cards before Nationals, which is going to be a huge buff as well. So we'll definitely see what this deck can do moving forward. But this is another one where, like, picking it up and playing it wouldn't be a bad call. It wouldn't be a bad call. Probably a little higher up in tier 2, I would say is going to be Centurion. Centurion, I'd put above Leb. That might be respecting it too much, but like they can now Calamity Lock you through Shifter, and that's kind of terrifying. Like if you don't open up an adequate hand to stop them, and even if you open up like the one hand trap and they open Oath, you still lose. So it's one of those things where the deck did get quite a big buff from the new set. So definitely make sure that you're aware of this. It's a very scary deck to play against, especially if you lose roll. So just make sure that you're on top of knowing what this deck does and how to stop it. I will be releasing Anywhere to Hand Trap soon, so definitely be on the lookout for that too, because that's going to help out with a lot of this. Striker, unfortunately, is still just Rogue. It's not very good. If you're using the engine of Striker and like Snake Eye, then it's fine, but the deck itself just still isn't strong enough. As for tier 1, you can say like highest tier 2, lowest tier 1 is probably Branded. It's still really solid as a tier 1 deck. I think it's fine. Especially if you're really skilled pilot like Nightfall or what have you. The deck itself can still reward really high level gameplay. It does have a tendency to brick, which is unfortunate. But like if you can throw a Puppet Lock or if you can just start looping Mirror Jade, the deck is still just as scary as it has been. So I think this is really like a skill issue. Like if you don't do well with the deck versus if you do really well with the deck, it's really going to depend on how long you've actually tested it. So make sure this is like the #1 deck. I would say that if you're going to pick it up, it's going to require the most amount of testing. Bistro Runick, I'd probably put that like really low tier 2, like highest rogue. Really unexplored since its first fruition. Definitely something that we could see again. We do have Metamorphosis. I think the card's insane. And a lot of other options for this deck, so I could see it coming back. But at the moment, I don't really see it doing a whole lot. So definitely just keep that in mind. Fluonderies, you're gonna see the deck. It's still gonna be like tier 2. I don't think that Flu ever moves above tier 2, because the second that Flu's the best deck, it just gets so heavily sided for that it's just not that good. So I think the deck is really crazy and it can do a lot, but it has the Pearly problem where it can never actually be the best deck, because the second it's the best deck, it just gets sided for. And that's another thing with Pearly too, is like Pearly gets shut out of the game so far right now because like Snake Eye can just search Kurakara. That's so sad. Like they just auto die, right? And that's just crazy. And there's a lot of people still playing like Underworld Goddess as well, so it's just a rough day to be a Pearly player. Vanquish Soul, probably just don't. I don't think this deck's very good at all. I think a lot of people are really trying to force this deck to be a deck, and it's just not. You can see it once in a while, but it's just not really popular. Sprite, any kind of Sprite variant, except for like Runick for Hire, which has like very minimal Sprite cards. Like this one would be in tier 2 for sure. It'd probably be like somewhere up in the mid-range of tier 2. Any kind of like Melfi Sprite or like Adventure Sprite is just gonna be in Rogue. It still loses to Rock really hard unless you can set up a board quick. If you do like the sprint line, then you get punished real hard by rock unless you open up like the starter. So I mean, it's not like that crazy, but I could see us getting like some kind of variant that is really solid moving forward. Vanadium, don't. It's so bad. Do not. Same with the Phantom Knight. Orcust, any kind of like Orcust pile with like the striker engine and whatnot, I think could at least be Rogue. 3 Harpor realistically does nothing without mermaids, so I mean it's fine. I'm not really too concerned about that. I can just sit in Rogue. The Runick stun deck is definitely still in tier 1 for sure. This is just so annoying to play against, and they've hit so many things, and it's still so relevant. I was really surprised they didn't hit the Runick cards, to be honest with you. I was really surprised. Still a really strong deck. There's not a whole lot that I really want to keep throwing up in tier 1, because realistically, if you have a bunch of decks in tier 1, that it's not like a tier 1 deck, I suppose. That just means that everything's tier 2, in my opinion, if there's so many decks that are just up in the same bracket as being like the better deck, right? I think it's fine as long as it's like a 5 or 6 deck meta where it's like the better decks up here, which is what you'll see when I finish up the list here. But these are your top 4 for now by far, and you can kind of count these as being like the same because it's just Snake Eye. But it's still like the different variants is really keen because like the Fire King variant is just nowhere near the regular variant, like the pure. Horus Stun is just gonna be like tier 2. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing game breaking. So like it's fine right there. Marincess is just gonna be Rogue. It's another hand trap deck, which is like fine. I think the deck is definitely okay, but I think there's just too many things going on because it's like your one card can get you so far, but like Snake Eyes one card can get you so much further, right? And like crazy follow up. So like I don't know, it's just not that good. It probably like the highest of Rogue, honestly. Like just to respect the deck a little bit more because like it can still steal a lot of games, which is fine. But like even Gozen going to 1 hurt this deck so bad. Because when you go for like Kragan and Gozen, right, that was like the whole deck's game plan. But like when you can't do that, it's kind of terrifying. Dark World, don't do it. It's just bad. Rika, this Rogue. You could say like bottom of tier 2, but it's not gonna do anything right now. Even with the Rika cards, it's just not gonna do anything. It's probably sitting like beneath Marincess or like somewhere on the same plane as it, but like it's just not gonna do anything right now. I always respect Plunder as Rogue. Shoutouts to the captain for making top 16. Which was really cool. I love this deck so much. It rewards the better player every single time. It's really difficult to pilot. Huge congratulations. Very cool deck. Sword Soul, Earth Machine. Try Fire is like Rogue. I still think Try Fire has a lot of potential. If you're looking for a budget option of playing Snake Eye, Try Fire really isn't that bad. This is something where you can pick it up for like probably like $60 or something and just play the deck. It is pretty fun. I do think that it's pretty competitively viable, but like it's not like winning a YCS viable, but like I've seen it top a couple regionals. So if you're looking to like get your invite or something, like I don't think this is a bad option personally. I think it's fine. Definitely something that's really fun. This deck is super scary. Okay, so I'm gonna put this like top of tier 2. The Volcanic, Horus, FTK, Runick, like this deck will just kill you. It will literally just kill you out of nowhere. There's so many things you got to hand trap in this deck. It's like actually insane. I would 110% respect this deck. Like if I sat down and saw this deck and somebody's like really competent with this deck, it's going to be a rough game. I think this is 110%. Now this might catch a lot of people off guard. This deck is like so scary though. Like I've seen it top so many regionals. It hasn't really done anything in the YCS. But like I think that second like you find someone who's really trying to learn the deck and like do well, I think the deck could like actually do well. This deck is really crazy. It is really scary though if you sit down against it. Tenpai, I think this deck isn't that good. Like it'll probably be tier 1 because of representation, but like I don't think this deck is that good. There's a lot of counters for it, and if you clear the field spell, the deck really doesn't do as much as you want it to. So like I'll respect it enough to say it's probably tier 1, at least right off the bat, because it's going to be everywhere, and that means the results are going to be based on, like, how much we see it. But, like, it's not going to be that crazy, I don't think. It won't be, like, that insane. But it will be really popular to start. This shouldn't be here again, so we'll just ignore that. Don't play Junk Spear Turbo. VW is a no. Voices is tier 1. This is, like, the second best deck in the room right now, beside, like, the Snake Eye variants. I think Voiceless is still, like, pretty crazy. I don't like the deck personally, but I think that you still have to respect it with the fact that it does really well. Bell is still probably going to be in, like, the tier 2 bracket. We'll see what it does moving forward. It has a lot of support. It has a lot of variants. I'm sure it'll move up and do better as we go forward, but right now I haven't seen enough of it to really be able to make a better judgment than tier 2. Dynamorphia, like mid tier 2. It's been doing a lot lately. So it's something where it's like one of those weird off decks that doesn't really do anything usually, but like for some reason now it just is. So that's like fine. And then we can also put Goaty in tier 2 as well. It's probably somewhere just like up here as well. I think this is fine. I think that right now we don't have a great idea of what the format looks like. We have a general idea of what it looks like. So as far as I see this here, like this is exactly where I think that the format will fall. Definitely a couple cool decks here to come and pick up if you want to. Because I feel like a lot of people would just think that it's only this right here, which is fine if you want to go to a YCS. You definitely want to go and like pick this stuff up if you want to go and do well. But if you want to have like the sleeper pick, definitely one of these in the tier 2 pile aren't that bad. Preferably like one of these up top. But like, I don't think anything in tier 2 is necessarily like an awful decision, except like these two and maybe Pearly. Anything from like Unchained on, I think is like fine. Definitely let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Definitely interested to hear what you have to say. Hope everyone has a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.